Okay. I started the recording already, but you have to stop the recording when you're done by going here to more, and then it says stop recording, okay?
I go into where?
Okay.
And start video I can do, right? You can close the door. Hi, everybody. You can unmute yourself. Unmute yourself so we can see each other.
Good evening, Rabbi.
Oh, good evening. How are you?
Baruch Hashem, we are doing well.
Thank
and your
you.
family?
Baruch Hashem, thank God. Good to see everybody.
Yes.
You had a good Pesach, I hope.
Yes.
Yes.
That's right, we spoke.
Yes, we did.
That's
Hello,
good.
guys.
Very good. David Schneider, you should unmute himself. I can't hear you. You have to.
Now, can you hear me?
Oh, now we hear you. How are you, David?
Baruch Hashem, and how are you?
Good, good. Baruch Hashem. How was Pesach?
Pesach was beautiful at the Seder. There wasn't one question asked that I couldn't answer.
And even the questions that you asked yourself, you also were able to answer.
I wouldn't have asked them if I didn't know. But one thing I did realize is that by doing it yourself all the way through, you learn a lot that normally you don't realize by reading every line and every word.
What? Give us an example, like what?
Oh, there were just all kinds of examples when I read, and I said, oh, normally during that time, they're going so fast that I don't pick up on that.
Elijah the prophet came to see you?
What he drank some of the wine, I think.
Oh, yeah? That's good. That's good. So
This is why my wine wasn't touched, because Elijah was in the David house.
Ah,
yeah. So that's it. So Pesach is over. Now, what's the plans now? What are we going to do now in the spring? What's on the agenda?
Lag Bomer.
Lag Bomer. Okay. So you have to speak to your governor to make sure that by Lag Bomer we are able to celebrate in public.
I'll talk to him.
He's a good friend of yours, I hear, understand.
I told him I won't vote for him if he doesn't open it up.
Okay, could be. Well, listen, let's hope for the best. Baruch Hashem. Everybody had a good Pesach. That's good. And we are waiting to hear good news.
Best news will be Mashiach.
I think so. I think that we all agree that we're not going to go less than for Mashiach. To make
our government already put the notice about the lifting up May 4th, but just very gradually for some services, for very essential, but not for everyone. So,
but David says that Mashiach is coming anyway, so who cares?
oh yeah, definitely, no doubt. So regardless of our governor.
I think if we're going less than Mashiach, then it's not. It wasn't worth it. We have to make it worth it. To make it worth it, we need to have at least Mashiach coming, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, especially now that that Pesach is over. Like this, we were all busy thinking about Pesach. Now there's no more Pesach around, so now we can focus on what we need to be focused. Hi, Karen, how are you? Unmute yourself. Say hello to everybody. Unmute. You can unmute yourself. Karen, you can unmute yourself so then you can say hello to everybody.
Pardon? I did. Sorry. Wait, it keeps going mute. Oh no, it's okay now.
Okay.
Can you
Say
hear
hello.
me?
Yes, we hear you.
I did before. It was muting. Hi, everyone. Good to
Hello.
see you.
Hello, hello.
What happened?
Nothing
Wait,
happened. It's okay.
that's not on yet.
Everything is okay. Everything is good.
I can't see Dad on. What happened to Dad? Maybe I need to phone him.
Maybe he fell
can't see.
asleep.
No. He usually looks forward to me. Grab to my call phone. I'm just going to go get it quick and give him a call.
Okay. So now everybody is here. Let's start learning. It's 7:30. Welcome. Good to see everyone. And Karen went to call your father. Can we wait a minute? Anybody wants to eat some tea? Please help yourself with some tea or some coffee. There's what is it? Oh, you can help yourself with some tea or coffee. Anything you want to help yourself in. I'm sure you have in your house something you want to help yourself. You can even say l'chaim. Take out some of the good stuff. Tonight is 2 days before Rosh Chodesh.
Aren't you in class? I see you're not there. Oh, Dad, I had to look on the East Side Tourist Center for the
Email. Don't go on the email.
yeah, the email.
And
But
then
I didn't have an email from today. It's the one for the whole week of classes.
also from today there's an email today.
I didn't see one today. I couldn't
There is,
find
there
one
is.
today because I was looking. And
There is.
which one you seeing from today? Are you seeing today's one? Or are you looking for the week thing? of
You can look
classes?
up today's email. There was an email today also.
You having problems? Okay. He's trying. He's having problems getting
Not
into
a
Zoom.
problem. Okay.
I couldn't find it today, so I went to the.
Okay. Karen, I think you should mute yourself.
All right, well, I just thing. I don't want somebody phoning.
Yeah, I didn't mute everybody here.
You confuse here. Mute, unmute.
Oh, and I'm gonna do it. On each participants. Okay. What do I do here? Okay, and then I go.
Hi, Luba.
Okay.
So happy to see you.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you. And we are ready to start tonight's Parsha class. And this week, the Parsha is Tazria-Metzora. And it's two portions which are joining together in two portions who are joining together. And they both mainly discuss a very interesting subject, a very important subject. And this is laws related to purity and impurity of a very specific type of experience called tzoras. Tzoras, for not having any better translation in English, they usually translate it as leprosy, which is not necessarily to be as, confused with what we consider leprosy today. But yes, it was a type of disease which did have a physical appearance, and there was many ways how it appeared, and the Torah in this week's Parsha goes in with great details about tzoras, which happened first on a person's home, on a person's belongings, like his clothes, and all the way to where tzorat also appeared on a person's own body, mainly on his skin. There is, like I said before, even just by reading the verses of the Chumash with some basic Rashi interpretation, by Rashi explanation, so you can also see that this is a very complex subject with a lot of very much details in what type of tzaraat, what is it supposed to look like, the waiting period to see if it's really afflicted with the virus or you're not afflicted with the virus. Is it positive? Is it negative? What are you having is a complex discussion in the Parsha, but not only in the Parsha, we actually have a whole volume of Mishnah called Mishnayot Negaim, which basically this subject of Mishnah discusses that very same subject of nega, of leprosy and tzaraat, and all the details which the Parsha discusses. It is what I said before, it is joining the group and the so-called the family of the laws called Tuma and Tahara, purity and impurity, which is basically, as we spoke many times, there is no clear logical explanations, rationale, why one thing or sign causes something to be determined impure, and how the change of color of a parent makes it to be pure. This is of the area which we refer to always as chukim. Chukim means statutes, laws beyond human comprehension, beyond human understanding. This is what God decided for whatever reason He had and He has to help us to live life in a way, the way life is meant to live and meant to be. But we do have an indication in the Torah, and obviously elaborated in the Talmud, and then qualified by the Rambam, Maimonides, to find a connection between this disease called tzaraat, and specifically the language of Lashon Hara, people who speak bad or slander or basically, share information about other people. How do we know that these two are connected? Besides what the Talmud talks about, as we're going to see soon more detail, but we have a biblical story. This story is not in today's Parsha, not even in the book of Vayikra, it's actually in the book of Bamidbar. In the third Parsha called Ba'aloischa, we have a story about Miriam, the sister of Moshe and Aaron, who was just having tea with her brother Aaron, casually discussing the life of their sister-in-law, Moshe's wife. And when they were discussing here, and when they spoke about here, apparently it seemed that they are getting into the so-called personal life of Moshe and his wife. The idea, which as the Torah says, is that Moshe is never home, he's busy with God, and feeling a little sorry for the sister-in-law Tzipporah, who lives a life with her husband not being available for her as usual. At that point, God appears and He says, "What are you guys talking about, Moses? Moses is not a typical prophet. I speak to Moses face to face." And the Torah concludes that Miriam was afflicted with tzaraas, with leprosy, as a direct consequence for what she spoke about Moshe. And again, like I said, this was just over a cup of coffee. It was not she went directly to speak bad about her brother. We all know how much Miriam loved her brother. We all know how much Miriam did for her brother. She personally stood by his side when he was born, making sure that he's being cared for and he's able to be provided everything that he needs after his mother left him in the Nile River. But still, the way the conversation went about was a clear indication that this is called gossiping. And for a person like Miriam and Aaron, they got the consequence for gossiping, and this is tzarat, leprosy. And this is what our sages tell us, that leprosy, tzarat, is a consequence directly associated mainly with gossip and lashon hara and slander. Comes the Rambam, the famous Rambam in the laws of tzarat. That's a section in the Rambam, in the Code of Law, the Mishnah Torah. So the Rambam has a section called Ilchos Tumas Tzaras, the laws of the tzaras impurity. And the Rambam refers to it, first of all, as a sign, as a miraculous, supernatural sign that God looks to help and assist a person here in this world who is inflicted with a problem of speaking lashon hara. And this is how the Rambam puts it. The different areas of tzarat, which all of it is discussed in this Parsha, is really different stages developing the warning, and in the other end, not just the warning, the protection, which God is trying to provide the person. What God is trying to provide and help the person in need, the person who never can control his mouth. So what does God do to such a person? First of all, he helps him by having tzarat appear in his house, on the walls. And the house becomes contaminated. And that should be the message. Be careful. You don't want to continue with the type of talk. If the message is taken seriously, the tzaras will disappear. Just as it appeared, it will disappear. And as we're going to see, the Kohen is the one who comes and determines the status of the tzaras. And the Kohen takes a look and examines the house, and he would say, okay, it looks good, it looks kosher. And then the guy goes on with his life as normally. What happens if he does not take the message properly? Comes the tzarat stage 2, when it appears to something closer to him. And this is his utensils, his belongings, all the way to the clothes, to the shirt that he is wearing, where he notices the stain of tzaras. And again, he has to go through the process with the Kohen and checking it and working on it and making sure that it's all okay. And if the guy actually took the message seriously and he resolved to watch his language, at that point, the tzaras of his garments disappear. God forbid not. Then comes stage number 3. And stage number 3 is when the tzaras eventually appears on your own body. And this is the more severe state of tzarat. And the severity of that tzarat is that the person carries such a high degree of impurity, of tumah, that the consequence for it is that he cannot stay amongst his neighbors, his family. He has to be sent out of the camp into complete isolation, or what we call it in today, in modern day, quarantined. But this is not just, quarantined by having your deliveries coming over to your house and you can sit on Zoom and meet friends and schmooze and talk. You leave the comfort of your home. You are basically sent out of your house. You sent out completely from the camp. And as the Torah says, Bodod Yeshev Michutz Lamachane Moishavoi, that you are being isolated outside of the camp, but not only outside of the camp. Even outside of the camp, you can't be in a place, in a motel or in a specially built structure, which all those affected by the disease can at least spend time together because they're not affecting each other. No, this is not happening by tzoras. But tzoras, the person goes into complete isolation, and even in the isolation itself, is being isolated from other members of the community while also spending their time outside of camp because of their tzoras. So this is true quarantine. This is the absolute isolation that in the laws of Torah, this is considered a very, very severe punishment associated with a very, very severe type of sin, speaking Lashon Hara. This is the background of what these Parshiyot talk about. And here we're going to see a number of very interesting things, mainly introduced by the Torah and by Jewish law in regard to Tzorat, and to see and notice what isolation means for a community member, for a Jewish community member, and how can one get rid of it by realizing a few of very interesting points in this subject. So let's start with point number one. Point number one, which is very specific in this area of tzaras. When it comes to tzarat, when it comes to leprosy, who is responsible and who is qualified to determine whether or not that person is suffering from that tzarat disease? So the Torah tells us that the only person who can determine it is a Kohen. Is a Kohen. As the verse says, Ki yeh bo shchin v'nira el ha-kohen v'ra'a ha-kohen timu ha-kohen nega tzarati timeh ha-kohen oto nega hi. It's all about the Kohen. No other person other than a Kohen can be involved in determining the status of this tzarat issue. To the point that the Mishnah tells us, and the Maimonides codifies it in halacha, that what is of the Kohen is not such an expert, meaning he didn't have the training to determine the proper nega, the proper infection, and to see whether or not this has all the conditions to render this individual of becoming a Metzora. The Kohen doesn't have the knowledge. You know what the Talmud tells us? At that point, you can bring in any scholar which is familiar with the laws and conditions regarding tzarat. But the scholar can only provide the information, but the determination whether or not that person carries that title of a Metzora, and whether or not it's going to have to be isolated, it belongs only to a Kohen. Only a Kohen can do it. And you wonder, why is there special such a need for a Kohen? Why do we need a Kohen to do it? Why can't we have any other scholar? In other words, we don't find anywhere else in the Torah or in any other area in Jewish law that you will require to determine a condition, and seemingly it's a physical condition appearing on a person's skin and a person's body. So we don't find anywhere in the Torah that you need to bring in a certain religious status of a person to determine the status of the person. As long that one is knowledgeable, he or she knows the information, let him share it. Here by Tzorat, you read in the psukim, in the verses, and the ongoing emphasis is only a Kohen. Why a Kohen? So here comes a very interesting point, which is mentioned by commentaries, and the Rebbe makes it into even a greater, beautiful insight by mentioning the idea in elaborating on it, and it goes as follows. In the one end, you're taking a person and you're going to decree that that person is becoming detached from his community. He or she are not going to see any people, not going to be around any people, not going to even together, like I mentioned before, with the people which carry the same disease, so to speak, but they have. This is complete separation. This goes against the core of humanity and the core of Jews as a nation. We are meant to be together. We are meant to mingle, to discuss, to join in services, to be a part of a congregation, to be a part of a family seder, to join together like Bomer barbecues. This is who we are. This is who we were meant to be. When we were taken out of Egypt, we weren't taken out of Egypt as individuals. Hey, you, Karen, come out. Hey, you, David, come out. Hey, you, Luba, come out. No. When we were taken out of Egypt, we were taken as a nation. As the verse says, Lakachat lo goy mikerev goy. Goy in biblical Hebrew means a nation. God came to pick up a nation from among nations and to give them the status of his nation, of his people. So this is not a club of individuals which was somehow put together in a certain frame of a community or a structure. We were picked as a nation to serve as people who are part of a nation, responsible for each other, caring for each other, creating a state of a minyan in order to say Kaddish, in order to say Baruch Hu, always meant, and this is the way the Jewish life and life in general is meant to be, in a way of integrating and supporting each other and learning from each other by physical meetings and contacts. That was the temple basically for us. 3 times a year, everybody came up to the temple. Maybe sometimes even during temple times, they had to walk up with wearing masks and gloves and keep social distances. I don't know. I didn't find in history that we were in such a state. But the idea was that you leave your house, you get out of yourself, you get out of your own comfort zone to meet someone else, or to bring in someone else into your house, into your community, in order to share and to learn and to support and to be included with each other. In Kabbalah, they use the term for Kedusha versus Klipa, which means holiness versus impurity. Kabbalah always puts an emphasis that Kedusha, holiness, is determined by the term and the concept called hitkalelut. You ever heard the term? Hitkalelut? Like one thing is kolel, is all-inclusive, all-inclusiveness. Even you can have different ideas to share different messages, but ultimately there's an all-inclusive frame and purpose which brings it all together. When Kabbalah talks about chesed, and Gvura. So they always go to the next step. There is Chesed in Gvura, there is Gvura in Chesed, and each one gets integrated and combined and conjoined with the other. This is called diskalelus. Klipa, impurity, is detachment and separation. Everybody has his own agenda, his own purpose, his own direction. I don't mix with you, you don't mix with me, and each one cares for himself, carrying their own life in their own so-called, celebration. Yiddishkeit, Judaism, and the way God created this world is actually ultimately is to be with each other and to learn from each other and to support each other and to enhance each other in getting enhanced by each other by carrying together life as one family, obviously with each one in his own privacy, but you at the same time, we are together. What are we called? We are called tzibur. Tzibur means a congregation, a community, all types of people. You know, it says in Kabbalah that the word tzibur, in Hebrew, tzibur means a community, is actually the abbreviation, the acronym of three types of people. The tzaddik of tzibur means tzaddik, which means righteous people. The bet of the letter bet of the word tzibur means benonim, intermediate people. And the reish of tzibur means reshaim, wicked people. Everybody together makes up a tzibur. You make up a tzibur by having all types of people. In certain things, you are the tzaddik. In other things, somebody else is the tzaddik. In certain things, you are the beinoni. In other things, the other person is the beinoni. And by being together and sharing together, that becomes that colorful picture of the different colors, expressing the greater, overwhelming concept and purpose. This is what tzibur is. L'chaim, l'chaim. But when it comes to a person who spoke Lashon Hara, what does Lashon Hara mean? He basically created a separation between people. He came over to one person telling him that the other person thinks about you such and such, or said about you such and such. And that causes the families to separate. That's what you think about me. So I don't want to know you. I don't want to hear about you. I don't want you to have anything to do with me. And this is, unfortunately, throughout our history, was the greatest cause of true separations, was the untrue stories and gossiping which was shared and peddled between one person to another. Comes the Torah and says, listen, this is the message. I don't want you to go there. If you don't understand what you are accomplishing with speaking and sharing not good things about somebody else, let me give you a little taste of it. And the taste is by putting the person outside of camp, by putting him in isolation, and tell him, okay, Nu, how do you feel now? How do you feel now? You can't talk to anybody. You can't spend life. You can't share. You can't go out to the restaurants. You can't go to a coffee shop. You can't sit down in a Starbucks. There's no more any of this. You are by yourself. You are isolated. You are completely separated and detached from the rest of the community. How does it feel? Not great, right? Not nice. True. That is what I want you to know, is you should learn and internalize what you cause by this type of speech called Lashon Hara. So we all know, and we learned about it every year, the relationship of tzaraat and isolation. We understand the consequence for that type of behavior. But what the Rebbe tells us here is this is all true. But yet, ultimately to give a person such a difficult consequence, to isolate them from the community, which is against the core of our being as a person, as a human being, to be joining others and learning from each other and support each other, that needs to have true examination. This has to be determined with 100% objectivity. Who is that objective person who is picked by the Torah to come and determine the status of a person and to put him into isolation? That can only be a Kohen. Why a Kohen? The Rebbe says as follows. A Kohen, from a Torah's perspective, is a man which projects chesed, kindness. Where do we see it? First of all, in the Torah, in Parshat Vezot HaBracha, the Kohen is called Ish Chasidecha. Tumecha Burecha Leish Chasidecha. The Urim Vetumim, which was one of Aaron HaKohen's garments as a Kohen, the Torah says was given Leish Chasidecha, the man of kindness. But where do we see mainly the connection between Kohen and Chesed? Is obviously by the very fact that the Kohen has the responsibility to bless people. The Torah says in Parshas Nosai, "Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe leimer," Hashem spoke to Moshe, "Daber el Aaron vel bonov leimer," speak to Aaron and his sons, saying, "Ko tevarchu et bnei Israel," so should you bless the bnei Israel. So Aaron and his children and his descendants throughout all the generations have the charge and the responsibility to bless people, to bless Bnei Israel. Every holiday, we have the priestly blessing. Every day in Israel, they have the priestly blessing. And the priestly blessing is not just a blessing which they bring about, and mention the great, wonderful gift that God should bless you and guard you and show a happy face to you. If you ever paid attention, and the blessings that the Kohanim are reciting before they recite the priestly blessing, they make a bracha. Because remember, for the Kohen, it is a mitzvah to recite the priestly blessing. So before you do a mitzvah, we always make a bracha before we do the mitzvah. Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu. We just all made a bracha, right? A week ago. Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, what? Al achilas matzah, to eat matzah. It's a mitzvah, so he made a blessing. Al achilas more. The Kohen, before he makes that mitzvah, which is what? To bless the community, he also gets up there and he says, Baruch Ato Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'kedushato shel Aaron. He sanctified us with the holiness of Aaron, v'tzivanu, and he commanded us, levarech et amo Yisrael, to bless his nation Israel, be'ahava, with love. The Kohen has a special commandment that he doesn't just give a blessing. His blessing has to be inspired with ahava, with love. In the Shulchan Aruch, by the way, in the code of Jewish law, it speaks very harshly about a Kohen who gets up there on the bima and he has somebody in mind which he wants to exclude from his bracha. He doesn't keep the right focus that I am here to bless everyone of Israel with ahava, with love. The Shulchan Aruch uses very harsh words. I don't want to even verbalize to that Kohen. What do you mean you didn't bless with love? You can only bless with love. So who is a Kohen? A Kohen is somebody who is all purpose in life is to be one who shares blessings of Almighty God with the rest of the community, with Ahava. A Kohen is not a person who has too much envy or competition, for the very simple reason that he was provided everything from the community. He was eating from the sacrificial meat, and he was given 24 gifts, those the Torah mentioned, is being provided to the Kohanim. The first of the wool that you take off from the sheep, the first piece of the challah dough, all those goes to Kohanim. So the fact that they were provided by the community doesn't give them a chance to be too competitive either. That's what the Kohanim are. So we're talking about a person who really, really has that lifestyle of being a man of kindness and sensitivity to others. Says the Rebbe, when it comes to determine a person's state of isolation, the Torah wants to make sure that you put yourself into it with an objective view and with empathy and sympathy to the one that you are now determining his status. And therefore, we can only have the Kohen being the one to do it, because isolation is so challenging and so difficult to a person that if there is any reason that you should not be isolated, the Kohen will figure it out. And if the Kohen will determine that this tzaras is already in a state which does deserve isolation, this is going to be after a lot of investigation and scrutination and look into it, into every detail, scrutinizing the tzarat and to the highest degree, into the most detail, to make sure that you really deserve it. Because the Kohen would not want to see a person being isolated so quick. This is against our core. We don't want to see it. This is point number one. Point number two. As we said before, that when it comes to the tzarat, there is stages. There is the house, there is the clothes, and there is the utensils and onward, and ultimately as the person's personal skin. Now, what happens if a guy is in his house and he has a bunch of furniture and utensils, and if the house becomes determined to carry that disease of tzarat, so everything inside the house also becomes affected. If the house is becoming tamei, whatever is in the house is also becoming tamei, is also becoming impure. Yet comes the Torah in this week's Parsha and says something so wonderful and so amazing. The Torah says that when you call the Kohen to come and check your house to make sure that whether or not, to examine it, whether or not it has tzarat. So the Torah says in chapter 14, verse 36, that the Kohen shall command, first of all, before I come in there, get everything out of the house. And only after everything is getting out of the house is only then when the Kohen comes in to check the house. What are you trying to get here? Why do you want everything to get out of the house? Because once he will determine the house to carry the disease, everything is going to be in quarantine, right? Everything is going to become contaminated. And the Torah wants you to be able to preserve your belongings. So now let's analyze it for a second. What would happen if the Kohen comes into the house and he looks around and he says, I'm sorry, you carry the disease and it's positive. Positive for corona, positive for tzarat, okay? Positive. And then everything in the house is also carrying, gets contaminated for the same reason. What happens? What happens? The worst, what happens? What happens? You have to take all those belongings and dump them into a mikveh in order to, they should regain their spiritual, their purified status. Just like the house gets the stone gets removed and so on, but the utensils, if they are infected with impurity, there is a system. There is a system how to render something which is impure and to make it pure again, right? There is a system. If there is a system, so why does the Kohen have to first send a moving company to get things out of the house before he will determine the state of impurity? Maximum, everything is going to be impure. Maximum, we're going to have to schlep everything to the mikveh and bring it back and make it kosher again. Says Rashi, there's one problem. And this is earthware, utensils which is made out of clay. Utensil which is made out of clay, if they become ritually unclean, they stay unclean. They cannot become pure again. The mikveh does not help for those utensils. Mikveh helps for glass, it helps for metal, it helps for all kinds of things, but not for clay cheres. Vessel which is made out of clay cannot be kashered again. So what's going to happen? If the Kohen comes and he determines that the house is not clean, the person is going to lose his dishes, which is made out of clay. That's the problem. What do we see over here? That the whole idea of tzoras, like we said before from the Rambam, that the idea of tzoras is an act of kindness, that God wants to help people to control themselves from speaking Lashon Hara, is in general the idea of Torah, but it's not only in these general terms. Even in the specifics, you see that the Torah views that person. Which person? A person who speaks Lashon Hara, a person who deserves tzoras at his house. He got a warning. The Torah still says, hello, he's a human being. He has to be given respect. The best and the maximum we can do to protect them, we have to be concerned with. And if we are going to cause that person to lose his dishes, which are made out of clay, therefore the Torah writes a specific verse, the Kohen shall not come into the house until the movers are moving those dishes out of the house. We don't want you to affect those dishes. Why? It belongs to this yid. It belongs to the person. What kind of person? A person who is a sinner, who got a sign of tzarat. Doesn't matter. Still, we are working with him. We are working with him. And while we are working with him, we are going to protect the best that we can protect. So in other words, what I'm saying is that not only, like we said before, that there has to be a Kohen who will determine the state of tzoras. Like we explained, in order to bring a person to a state of impurity like tzoras, it has to come from the more loving, sensitive individual in our community, which is the Kohen. But even that Kohen itself is also being guided with other sensitive conditions before establishing a state of tzoras even to a person's house. We take care on his dishes. Point number 3. The Torah tells us that when the nega appears to the eyes of the Kohen, so the Torah uses a very interesting, not interesting, like the Torah says a word which our sages found it seemingly unnecessary, superfluous. It says on chapter 13, verse 14, it says, Ubeyom, on the day Eira'ot bo, when in the day it appears that tzaras, then is when he becomes impure. So Rashi brings us from the Talmud, what is the idea ubeyom? Ubeyom means on the day. And apparently there's a specific day which it's supposed to happen. So there's one idea in general that tzarat can only be seen by day, it cannot be seen at night. It's another halachic concept in the state, in the halachas of tzaras. But Rashi tells us something very special from the Gemara, that this verse tells you that not every day when a person feels that he has tzaras, not every day will we get the Kohen right away to come and give him a test to check if it's positive or negative. There are days that we're doing it, and there are days, says Rashi, that we're not going to do it. What days are we not going to do it? Says Rashi, Yom Tov. You have 7 days Yom Tov. Sorry, the guy comes Yom Tov, he says, oops, I think I have something on my skin. It looks like I got to make a call. Kohen, come see. The Kohen would say, sorry, now is Yom Tov. Yom Tov, I'm not coming to you, but I might be Tomei. On Yom Tov, I'm not determining anybody to become Tomei. Similarly, says Rashi, Chassan, a groom, just got married. You got married, you wake up the next morning, whoops, tzaras. You tell your bride, Rebbetzin, I'm sorry, I'm calling the Kohen, we gotta come in to check it out. And she says, what do you mean? It's only something on your skin. He says, no, it started in my house, it went on my clothes. Now it's already only on my skin. Apparently I gotta call up the Kohen. I don't know, I might be carrying this terrible disease, which is called tzaras. Calls up the Kohen says, hi. He says, yeah, what happened? Tzaras. When did you get married? He says, yesterday, 2 days ago. Oh, sorry. 7 days of celebration, we don't come into you. You could have a party, celebrate with your bride, continue the simcha. Now is not a time to look at your tzaras. This is the halacha. What do you see here? We're talking about a person who is obviously involved in Lashon Hara, meaning the tzaras is already appearing on his flesh, right? So somebody else can come and say, Yom Tov, this guy, does Yom Tov mean something to this guy? Does he need to celebrate Sukkot? Does he need to celebrate Pesach? Does God care whether or not he eats matzah or doesn't eat matzah? He's a lowlife. He's a person who's involved in Lashon Hara. Look, God already gave him the tzarat on his skin. Before it was on his clothes, and even prior to it, it was on his house. He's obviously not listening. He's not sensitive. He's not following the messages. So maybe God doesn't care if he's celebrating Pesach or not. Says the Torah, no. Ubeyoim, only on certain days will the Kohen look at Yitzarat to exclude other days. And this is the halacha, that when it comes to Yom Tov, or when it comes to a groom who is in the middle of the 7 days of his celebration, the Kohen will ignore whether or not he has Tzarat, because since he's involved now in a mitzvah, says Rashi, while you're involved in a mitzvah, we are not going to have you be removed from the mitzvah and to get isolated until you're done with your mitzvah period. First, this is already a further point. So not only, like we said before, it is the Kohen who has to declare the isolation because he's a man of kindness. And not only, as we said, point number 2, that it is that the vessels and the dishes have to be removed before the Kohen comes in because it might be affected. We try to protect every belonging of that person who is sitting with another person, right? Trying to protect all his belongings. But goes even further, that very same person, says the Torah, when he does a mitzvah, God says, I want to take a benefit, I want to take pleasure from his mitzvahs. Don't confuse the fact who he is with what I want from him. Not because he's behaving in a certain manner, therefore I care less about his mitzvot. I do want this person who is a Lashon Hara person still to put on tefillin and still to eat matzah and still to get married and still to celebrate Pesach, and therefore the Kohen is told to ignore his tzaraat until the involvement with the mitzvah is coming to an end. And here comes a fourth point in tzaraat. By the way, tzaraat is a very fascinating discussion. It's like I said, the Torah reading is so much in the details, which we don't have much of understanding of it, that it looks to us a very far-fetched type of subject. But if you get into the conditions of Torah, there is so much to learn from. In many of these things were discussed by the Rebbe through the years, and what I'm sharing with you tonight. But here comes the fourth point, which is going to be the last point of Tzorah that we will share in tonight's class. What happens? A person who is a Metzora, walks into my house, carrying corona, not keeping the social distance. Okay? So they're coming to my house. Now he or she are carrying a state of tumah. So if I invited that person into my house, the Torah says, I'm sorry, anything that he said on the house he walked in, it's becoming tummy too. You shouldn't have invited him. What happens if he came in and I didn't invite him? So is there a time frame for how long is he going to be in the house? I mean, it takes time to throw somebody out. And maybe I'm busy with something. So what happens to that person? Says the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda teaches us that as long that it takes to light your Shabbos candles, that is the time period that you have to get them out of the house. If you kept them home longer than that time, then you're considered to keeping them home voluntarily, and your status is going to change from purity to impurity. Very interesting. The Torah was, obviously the halacha was looking for a certain time measurement. And they could have said, as long as it takes to put on tefillin, as long as it takes to eat cholent on Shabbos, I don't know, as long as it takes to eat matzah. There is a lot of things which takes time. The Talmud says that what is the time period? What is the considerable measurement, the shiur, for the time frame having a Metzora in your house? And at that point, it will be considered your fault, is the time frame which it takes for the person to light Shabbos candles. Now, how long does it take to light Shabbos candles? I don't know. My mother lights, she lights a lot of candles. She started when she got married, she lit 2 candles of the regular white candles, because it says when you're married, you should light 2 candles, right? In addition, she started up with 10 little wicks in a plate of oil. So she started up with 10, plus 2 is 12. And at that point, for every child that she gave birth to, she added another wick. Okay? Another wick in the oil. So now you make the math. My mother lights close to 30 candles every Friday. It takes her a long time. She starts lighting candles 45 minutes before candle lighting time, almost an hour before. It takes her time to go through every candle until it catches fire. Some people have 1 candle, 2 candles. So I'm not sure, and I couldn't find, I tried to look today, is there a time frame in minutes for that status? I couldn't find. Honestly, I couldn't find. But obviously there's a message here that what was considered to be a time frame to allow tzoras to kick into your house is the time frame which is to light Shabbos candles. Post that time, the house becomes tummy. Prior to the time, you can send them out and the house is still going to be clean. It has to be a connection with candle lighting. I looked it up, and obviously, again, I found the Rebbe discussing it in great length. And what does the Rebbe say? Yes, candles on Shabbos is that which is protecting us from tzarat. Why? Why are we lighting candle Shabbos? We are lighting candle Shabbos not only to honor Shabbos. It is to honor Shabbos by making sure that we are surrounded with light. We don't live in darkness. A person who is in a dark place with no light trips. You trip over a chair, you trip over the couch, you trip over the table. And this is the greatest cause for the opposite of shlom bayit, or for any type of peace and tranquility in one house, is darkness. Why do you speak Lashon Hara? Why are you getting involved in discussing someone else's life and trying to separate people one from another? Because you are living in a state of darkness. You are missing Shabbos and you don't have Shabbos candles. A person who lights candles on Shabbos, which means he brings in the light of Shabbos. Shabbos is Kedusha, Shabbos is holiness. You bring in holiness into your life, you bring in God into your life, you don't have to speak about others. You don't have to make yourself busy in discussing your fault and his fault and what this family meant and what this guy meant. All these bubbemeisers, all these discussions is simply because we are in a state of darkness. You can't see the goodness of life. You can't see the holiness of life. You can't see the Kedusha, the rest, the tranquility that Shabbos represents. So you end up speaking Lashon Hara. So this is kind of how the halacha and the Talmud is indicating what allows tzoras in your house is as long that the person was there over the time which it takes to light Shabbos candles, to teach you by indirectly teaching you that let's bring in Shabbos. Let's maybe realize what brought a person to become a Metzora. What brought in a person to become isolated and impure? Maybe because he wasn't or she wasn't paying attention and being sensitive enough to the light that we have in our lives, to the positive things that we have in our lives, to the good things that Hashem gave us. Now that you are a Metzora, you start counting your blessings. Now you have time to think about, like somebody told me, that yoga class I'm missing so much. I don't remember you bless God every day for that yoga class, but now that you don't have it, somebody else needs their class, needs their coffee, needs their drink, their office meeting. Every person needs, and by the way, not by the way, directly, we should all be blessed, really, to come back and to return to the so-called the normal life. But if we would just come back to normal after these 5-6 weeks or as long it takes, then it was really a waste of a very terrible situation, which should have never happened. Either way, it should have never happened. But that would have been a waste. But I really expect, personally, between you guys, that after such a terrible situation that the entire world is, after such a Pesach, after all this that we had run through, so many deaths and so many losses and so many situations, and the economic crisis and so on. I personally want to actually materialize now. The next step is Moshiach to come. If it's anything less than Moshiach, I'm not interested. I'm telling you the truth. I'm not interested in having my kids at home on online school and having to feed them 10 times a day and just to end up coming back to normal life tomorrow. No, it was worthless. This is worthless. Doesn't make any sense. If we go through what we are all going through, it has to be leading us to a new era, to a new state, to a new experience, a time when it's all going to make sense. This is the time of Mashiach. Nothing less than that. But Mashiach is a process. God forbid, it can come in a so-called in a organic type of development, which can take a little time. So at least what we have to remember is to take these times and really count up all the wonderful blessings that we had till now, and thanking God for them, and asking them to give us those times again and even more. Right? How much would we give now to be together Shabbos by a Kiddush? Give me the opportunity. Okay? Next time, don't run out from the Kiddush so quick, because you don't know how fast you're going to get it. Okay? I see Avram Abrahamov is here. Avram goes and he bought, and sometimes he told me, Rabbi, I think I'm buying too much. I think the chunk is too big. People are not eating it. Okay? Now you know. Next time you make a challenge very soon, there are going to be many people eating it, and they're going to remember what was the days that we didn't have the challenge. Right, David? But anyway, what I want to conclude tonight is just to summarize this message again. We are learning about a very difficult disease called Metzora, which comes from a very specific type of situation, a person who is very insensitive and behaves in a very cruel way of separating himself and separating people from each other, and therefore he gets that punishment. But at the same time, like everything else in Torah, is also kindness. There is no disease which is only a punishment. Everything carries a positive message. And like we saw from the Rambam, that God wants to protect us, so he keeps on giving us one message after another to make sure that we don't fall too far. Come on, come closer to me. Stay with me. This is what the Rambam says. This is not a philosophical Hasidic insight. But it's not only that. As we shared from the Rebbe, the beautiful insights of having a Kohen do it. Number one, a man of kindness. Only he or she should determine the isolation of somebody. Also, the idea that there has to be, that to be sensitive, even when a person does get punished, to at the same time consider every piece of belonging. It could be a piece of furniture, which is as simple as a plate made out of clay. The Kohen is not going to make any determination until this is being protected, because this is not going to be able to get kosher again if it's tummy. And the same idea that we spoke, that even a person like this, God wants and loves every good deed that the person does. And that's why we will exclude holidays and weddings and other mitzvah involvements to be a considerable time to be counted for tzaras, and ultimately to the message that Shabbos candles and the Kedusha of Shabbos and the holiness of Shabbos in the light of a mitzvah chases away the darkness which leads a person to tzaras. So with this in mind, I would like to conclude by, number one, inviting everyone here to come join us for the next Zoom meeting if Mashiach doesn't come in the next 48 hours. So we know that this Friday is Rosh Chodesh, the new month of Iyar. So at 6 o'clock, which is 45 minutes before legal candle lighting, we are going to have a Zoom meeting for a half hour. We're going to sing some Shabbos songs. We can say L'chaim to each other before Shabbos. and we can wish each other a good Shabbos since we don't see each other in shul. And again, on Sunday at 6 p.m., we're going to have our second class on the subject of Moshiach. And this time we are going to discuss which bracha are you going to say the moment you see Moshiach arrive, or even if you hear about it. You know, you're going to have to say a bracha, maybe more than one bracha. So if you want to make sure that you know which bracha you make when Moshiach comes, come back joining us on Sunday, 6 o'clock class with a pen and paper so you can write down the brachas. We will discuss it, obviously, and see what we come up with. Finally, this class you can share. With this Zoom, there's a way that you can share it with others, and then you can also invite others to come and join you. Now you can open up your unmute if you want to talk and meet and greet. Please do so.
Rabbi.
Hello.
Yes. I'm so happy to see you. I see that there is like are you on the beach outside?
It's a picture. It's a virtual background.
Beautiful. Very beautiful. So happy to see you.
Yes, I'm happy to see all of